Hey, Yosemite Church, so glad to see you via the camera, but we have got some exciting stuff. This is our conclusion to our Fight or Flight series, and we want you to take home as much as you can. So, a lot of what we want to communicate really in this whole series, and especially today, is that picking up one or two of these amazing skills can carry your relationship into a whole new area of connection and intimacy and trust and safety. So I just want to review a few things and let you know, hey, I am here via video because I am not here in person. I'm in Southern California at a missions conference and also doing a wedding down there for some dear friends. So in my absence, Rueben is going to be teaching here in Merced, and in Atwater, go Atwater, Don Borgwart is going to be teaching there. So kudos to both those guys. Give them lots of love today. But really wanted to kind of just say, where have we been? And we've been saying that every single week, in order to improve our communication skills and find a better way than fight or flight. What is that better way? One, learn to listen. Learn to listen. So we spelled out the acrostic active. A stands for accept that communication is not easy. C is commit to learn new skills. T is take time to first understand and then be understood. I is increase understanding through paraphrasing. V is validate the message, and E is empathize with the message. Those are amazing little skills for just listening, and listening all by itself can take a conversation that starts to go bad and turn it to a direction where it's going to go good. It's going to create safety when you can listen well. So learning to listen, pick one of those skills out of that message. You can go back and watch that message over again by going to your YC app. The notes are in your app as well. Pick a skill out of that. Learn to listen. Everybody benefits when you learn to listen. The second week was learn to look, and learning to look really has to do with kind of looking at three things. One, look for that crucial conversation. We said the crucial conversation I kind of call the danger zone, the Bermuda Triangle. It's got those opposing opinions, those strong emotions, and high stakes. When those three things are present, you got a crucial conversation. Learn to look. Do you see it coming? Do you find yourself in the middle of it? And when you do, learn to look for the fight or flight response that we all have. Are you, powering up, or are you powering out or powering off? What's going on for you? Learn to look. Third thing to look for is look for the heart. Look to your own heart and say, what do I want for me, the other person, and this relationship? Learn to look for a way to make it safe, because whenever you go to fight or flight, you do not feel safe. Week 3, we talked about learn to make it safe. And learn to make it safe really is all about recognizing two things are going on whenever you go to fight or flight. You either do not have a common purpose, a mutual purpose, or you do not have a common or mutual respect. So kind of look for one of those two things. Do we need to find a higher purpose because we're at odds? Or have I violated respect? Have I, hit under the belt? I've said something hurtful. Own it. Simply say, I apologize. That was disrespectful. Would you forgive me? Come straight up, give that apology. The second thing we said to kind of protect safety, learn to make it safe, is use contrast. I don't want you to think I'm not for you. I don't want you to think that I'm against you. I don't want you to think this concern is your total performance. I do want you to know if we could work on this issue, we can really get better. Contrast kind of clarifies and takes the misunderstanding out of the conflict. Remember, the goal of communication is to be understood. When misunderstood, use contrast. And then we talked about the crib acrostic, which is in your notes and also on that third message. The fourth message, last week we talked about your path to action, and that's a big one. Kind of learning to recognize that in our path to action, it starts out, box number 4 is act. I'm in fight or flight. Box number 3, I feel. Emotions generate action. Box number 2, we skipped. We talked about box number 1 is see and hear. I see things, I hear things, and then I feel and I act. Why? Because box number 2, I tell a story. learn to get in touch with the stories you're telling yourself, and you will get in touch and in control of your emotions. That's our review for where we've been. The guys are going to talk about a powerful thing today. The concept today really is about understanding that all of us have a story, and sometimes the story that we have, our life story, affects the stories we tell ourselves. We're going to talk today about how to keep it safe. Thank you so much for being here. Use the skills, and don't forget to come back for Mother's Day. We've got a ton of great things planned for mothers and for all of us as we get ready to celebrate such a gift to all of us, our moms and grandmothers, the women in our life who've influenced us so much. Find out about influence and how to leverage it this Mother's Day. God bless. See you soon.
Good morning. How's everybody today? So for those of you I have not met, my name is Rueben, and I work with the middle school and high school with the Next Generation team. So do we have any middle school here? I see a few. Today we're going to do something different. Usually we go across the street and at the school and we do a middle school service. Today we'll do it here and we'll allow your parents to stay. How about that? Yeah. But I do want to thank everybody that allows us to work with your children. Our jobs are just to kind of help your kids discover who God is, their spiritual identities, and just kind of nurture them through that. So I do appreciate you as parents allowing us to do so, because if you did not allow that, then there would be no need for us here on the Next Gen team. So just want to say thank you for that, for allowing us to do that. So we've had about 15 weeks of really good stuff, I think. If any of you guys have been here for the entire 15 weeks, we started 10 weeks about our attitudes and how our attitudes affect our disposition and our relationships with the people around us. So that was really, really a time of self-discovery for me, and I hope for you too. And then we had a pretty natural segue after that. Now that we know why we act the way we act and that our attitudes do affect other people, how do we communicate that in a safe way to do so? So that's what we led up to the last 4 weeks. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've been talking with Pastor Jeff about this stuff for well over a year, because I've had blocks in the way that I communicate with just one person in particular. I've trained this material at a professional level. I worked for the County of Merced at the welfare office. And part of discovering what somebody needs is an interview. Somebody's sitting on the other side of the desk there, and you're doing a fact-finding interview, so you have to be able to listen to pull out what their needs are, what they're saying, what they need, what help are they looking for. So I can train this stuff. I do it well with my kids. I do it well with my peers. I do it well with my employers. But when it comes to one particular person, which is my wife, I don't do this well at all. And why is that? Why, if you know this stuff, is there somebody that you have such a problem communicating with? And we'll get into that maybe in a little bit. Not maybe, but for sure in a little bit. But to give you a little bit background about our relationship is when we get into these conversations, she is a fighter. She will keep coming verbally, keep trying to get things out. I, on the other hand, shut down completely. And I think, you're being very aggressive by the way you're attacking. But I know she hates when I get quiet and shut down. So I'm being kind of just as aggressive by shutting down, knowing that it's upsetting her when I do that. So we're both kind of just antagonizing each other instead of doing any kind of communication. We've been doing that for, quite a few years, and it never works, but we always do the same thing. And we expect like it's going to be different, but we do the same thing over and over again. So last week we're sitting here, as we usually sit in those chairs over there. Pastor Jeff's giving his message, and we're filling out our sermon notes. And she's writing on hers, and I'm writing on mine. And there comes a point where she leans over to me and she says, "Man, this stuff is good. I hope you're writing it down." And I look at her, and I said, "You know what I was thinking?" I said, "This stuff is good. I hope you're writing this down." So both of us understand that we need a better style of communication because what we do currently isn't working very well. So these are new skills, which can seem awkward, especially when both of you are trying it, because it's something completely different than you've ever done. So when you say, okay, how are you feeling? And you've never asked that before, it might seem a little bit weird, but trust me, it does work. It's kind of like this hammer. When I grew up, everybody knows what a hammer is and what a hammer is used for. But if you've never really used a big, heavy hammer like this, it can be very awkward at first. Swinging this thing all day, I would come home, my arms would be extremely sore because I came from more of a business background. I worked in offices. I didn't want to do manual labor. I didn't know who Manuel was, and I did not want his job. I wanted to sit behind a desk. But then I got an opportunity to learn construction. So taking this tool, which seems simple, you see nail, hit nail, is a lot harder than it seems. I saw nail, bent nail most of the time. Then I'd have to take nail out, put it back in the hole, and I would try tapping it up, tapping it sideways, and then just bend the heck out of it. So my brother, he set up a board, and he'd say, just on breaks, practice hammering that nail. Still very awkward. It was a new skill to me. So for my birthday, he bought me a lighter hammer, and he thought it'd be funny to zip tie a little tiny level on the top of my hammer to say, just keep it level and hit those things. So I kept it level, bent the nails, whatever. Never became really great at that, but it's just like these skills that you're learning. It may seem awkward at first, but the more practice that you do and you utilize some of these, they honestly do work. And just like this hammer, I would never use this hammer to take a light bulb out or to take the light switch cover. That's not what the hammer's for. And just like that, it's not every conversation needs these particular set of skills, but they can quickly turn to need these skills. I'll give you a very innocent way that ours sometimes turn into these crucial conversations. Guys, you might agree with me when I ask you, have you ever asked your wife where she wants to go eat? A few of you have, I can tell. I do that. Sometimes I go to pick up my wife from work and I think, man, I want to take her somewhere where she really wants to go. Somewhere nice, just because I'm feeling like being extra nice. So I pick her up and I say, where do you want to go eat? And she says, I don't care. And I'm like thinking, okay, but please pick somewhere because I'd like you to choose. She'll say, whatever you want. And then I'm like, come on, just pick somewhere. And she'll say, I don't want to pick. And then I say the really, really bright thing like, you never pick anywhere, you're so indecisive. And that quickly turns into one of these crucial conversations where we end up at home and I say, fine, we're just going to go home and eat cereal. We're not going anywhere. So then she's in the room, I'm in the kitchen, and I say, what kind of cereal you want? She says, I don't care, pick one. Same conversation. But see, any of these things can happen like at the spur of a moment. So to have these skills, just like a good tool, is a good thing to have in your arsenal. So that way you can simmer the conversation down and have a good conversation. So our theme verse for today will be Ephesians 4:29 that says, do not let unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So in our conversations, in our arguments, how many times do we say unwholesome things to that other person? Probably quite a bit. How many times do we raise our voice to that other person? Quite a bit. I read yesterday the Archbishop Desmond Tutu says, do not raise your voice, improve your argument. Makes sense to me. Because I think I tell the youth over there, sometimes we may curse or we may yell when we have nothing better to say. Improve your argument, and you may not have to yell. So why do we want to try to even try all these communication skills? Why does it even matter? Well, we know that the purpose to communicate is to be understood, and it's to come up with a common purpose. And in my relationship, the one that I cannot communicate with or that I'm learning to communicate better is my wife that I truly love. And it has to come from my heart. And with a pure heart, I'm able to step back and say, I need to try something different. So we came up with these 4 ways to maintain a pure heart. The first one is just to be humble. Just be humble. Your opinion isn't the only opinion. My wife, when she married me, she married Mr. Right. What she didn't know was my first name was Always. That was my attitude. I'm older than you. I'm wiser than you. I know better than you do. And that has gotten us really nowhere, because I don't always know better. I think I do, but the humility allows me to get away from myself, kind of step aside and be able to listen and willing to listen to somebody else's opinion. That's tough sometimes. But the Bible, humility seemed like the most common theme running that Jesus ever taught was the idea of being humble, making yourself a servant to somebody else, willing to listen to somebody else. Ephesians 4:2 says, be completely humble and gentle. Pretty clear. 1 Peter 5:5 is a little bit more intense if you look at it, where it says, God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. It's a pretty clear message that God's intentions for us is to humble us, make humility one of our more common and major strengths. The next thing is just be sincere. Like, have you ever walked by somebody and asked how their day is going and they start to tell you and you're like, oh no, I don't have time for this. I didn't mean it. I thought you would say, I'm fine too, good to see you, talk later. Being sincere is making yourself available, being present right then, right now. If you're going to ask somebody how they're doing or what's going on, make sure you have the time to actually listen. They may want to open up and communicate with you. Also, I thought of, in your apologies, Pastor Jeff says one of the first way to maintain safety is to just say, I'm sorry. You better be sincere in those apologies. I've thrown out those ones. Fine, I'm sorry then. That's not actually being sincere, that's pointed out to me a lot. Like, I don't even believe that, sorry. Well, I didn't even mean it, but, that's not being sincere. I never said I was perfect up here. I'm just sharing. I'm learning too. Romans 12:9 actually says, love must be sincere. We're to hate what is evil and cling to what is good. And 1 Timothy says, the goal of this command is love, which comes from a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. Sincerity is very important in any type of communication. You have to mean what you say and say what you mean. It's pretty easy. The third one is kind of tough for me, but it's to be curious. Do not get angry. Just ask what's behind their story. Sometimes somebody she'll say something to me that just initially angers me, and I stop listening altogether. But the book says to ask yourself, what would a reasonable, rational person, why would they be acting this way? And it allows you to open your mind to hear their opinion. Now, don't say that to them. Why would a reasonable, rational person be acting like you? But you kind of keep that to yourself. But ask yourself that. And keep an open mind. Because you don't know what's behind their story, why they're acting the way they're acting, or they're responding the way they're responding, unless you're sincere and curious and you allow them to open up to you. Philippians 2:3-4, the passage says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. That's curiosity, looking at their interest, their perspective, their ideas. The fourth one is just to be patient. Be patient. Safety takes time. Communication takes time. As we'll share in a minute, or I'll share with you in a minute, some of the things that have been going on for many years. Can't expect to get over them in a minute. We can't expect to change in a minute. Sometimes, when you get angry, your adrenaline's pumping. You've got all of these things going on in your body and your brain, and it takes time to calm them down to even be able to sit and have a rational conversation. That's why, sometimes we just step away for a minute regain our senses, cool off, come back later, readdress it. Just be patient. Ephesians 4:2 says, be patient, bearing with one another in love. And 1 Corinthians says, love is patient. If you look on the back of your cereal box or something, it lists the ingredients from the most important or most prominent to the least prominent. And when we looked at what God said about the ingredients of love, the very first most prominent one is patience. We're supposed to be patient. So now we'll get into a little bit of my backstory, because when we were reading this book, and I was talking about these sermons for, like I said, the past year with Pastor Jeff, the book says that when you come to a crucial conversation, somebody says something, instantly you have a feeling, or you tell yourself a quick story, that you may not even realize you're saying, and then you go to the feeling and the action. And I said to him, but what if the story that you tell yourself is the same one every single time, and it's an old one that you can't get beyond, so you don't even necessarily hear what's going on because it's triggered something in you and you shut down or you fight or whatever it is. So we kind of explored that, and so I'm going to share a couple with you of my own, and it might shed a little light why I do what I do. Well, I was married when I was very young. I got married at 19 or 18, I believe, had 2 children, 2 little girls. And that relationship did not work out at all. We got married way too fast. And so we divorced, and I started dating another woman, a young lady, and we started having kids. Well, that young woman hated the fact that I had kids from another woman. And she knew about those kids, but she hated it anyways. And we would fight about my children all the time. They would come over to visit. They lived in the Bay Area. We lived in Salinas at the time. They would come over to visit, and my second wife would just either disappear, go off to another room the entire visit, or just be completely rude to the kids, and, was just totally mean to them, to the point where they wouldn't want to come and visit me anymore. Well, I made probably the most foolish decision that I had ever made. I said, then we'll stop having them over, because one day of fun for me wasn't worth 2 weeks of fighting afterwards. So I made an incredibly stupid decision that's kind of followed me around for 20-something years. I have a 25-year-old daughter who won't speak a word to me, and I don't blame her for that. Her little sister, who's 23, we do have a relationship because we've had this crucial conversation. I called her one day, and I sent her a text, hey, your dad's going to be on TV if you want to watch. It was the first time I came and gave my testimony. And so she watched it, and she said, Dad, that was really cool. Congratulations. And so we started talking, and I told her, you know what, I'll give you an opportunity right now to yell, cuss, scream, cry, say whatever bad things you want to say about your dad, because I deserve every bit of it. And she did. And she said to me, by the way, Dad, she says, I've been going to church now for about 7 years, and I forgave you a long time ago. And so now we do have a pretty good relationship. But it was only through God that we were able to do that, because I tried a bunch of times and would just continue to fail her over and over again. So after she forgave me, I had to kind of try to forgive myself for making that terrible choice. And hopefully one day that other sister will see that I'm not just disappearing again and give me the opportunity. So that's one story. And the way that relates to anything is now I'm remarried again to my third wife, and my children from the second wife live with us now. But all she has to do is say, hey, we need to talk about one of the kids. I tell myself, you don't like my kids. You don't want them around. You want me to ask them to leave. Why do I tell myself that? Because that's what I heard way back 20 years ago that ruined my relationship with my kids. Now, my wife could be talking about something they did well, or something simple as, hey, maybe one of them can help clean up this house once in a while. It's nothing serious, but I have said things like, what are you going to do, asking me to tell them to leave now? And she would say, why do you even think that? And it's because it's not even her. It's a story I tell myself. So mention my kids and I get very defensive. That's something I need to get past in order to have open communication. But that's a story that affects every communication we have. My other story is she tells me I'm very emotionless. I'm like a robot. I have no feelings. Well, we sat out here last week and we kind of talked about, in between services, we talked about why we act the way we act. If our propensity is for fight or flight, then how are we ever going to teach our children differently if we each do one or the other? And why do we do what we do? Well, again, sharing about myself, every relationship I've had up to this point, the woman has left me for another man. There's been cheating every single time. So I stopped trusting women. I stopped trusting women with my feelings. I started trusting women with really anything. I wouldn't open up again because I have a fear of rejection. I have a fear of rejection now. If, people started to get up and walk out, I might shut down because of everything, please don't, everything that I've had up till this point. I'm a guy who would take an F in class instead of give an oral book report because I wouldn't stand up in front of anybody and speak because of the fear of being rejected. So sitting out there, being able to openly communicate with a pure heart with my wife, why does she always fight? I will not share her story. That's up to her if she ever cares to share it. But she was victimized a lot as a child. And she said that at one point, she chose that she would never let herself be victimized again. So anytime we argue, the first thing as her defense mechanism is to fight for her life, whatever that means. Even something as simple as you can never choose where we want to go out for dinner. She's going to fight to the death because that's the story she's told herself, is she's committed to never losing another fight again. So this is stories about, having a pure heart and letting your stories not tell other stories. Now, when you argue with somebody, and if it's just arguing with no mutual purpose, somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. I always wanted to win. So I would allow myself to fight with my wife, she would get so anxious she would just start to cry. See, I've got one bad ear, one good ear, so all I would do is roll on my pillow on my good ear so I didn't have to hear it and I would go to sleep. I didn't hear it. I slept like a baby. I'm halfway deaf. Then I'd wake up in the morning, the sun's up, it's a new day. I'd wake up with a smile, say, all right, it's a new day, let's go do something fun. And she would look at me and say, do something fun. We never finished last night. Oh, man. I like to forget about it. It's a new day, a new set of things. She needs to resolve yesterday's issues. So, men, I'll ask you guys, if there's another man out there or somebody that makes your wife or significant other feel like a loser, wouldn't that make you pretty upset? I know it would me. But the problem is I was making her feel like a loser. Why would I want that? I talked to my youth kids one day about that, and I said, sometimes in winning, I actually very much lost. What did I lose? I lost 2 days with the woman that I married that was my best friend, just so I could be right over something totally pointless. Most of the time, it was a completely useless argument, but I still had to win. Trying something new because, God can redeem the stories, that He can open up communications, He can restore relationships, He can forgive me, I can forgive myself, and we can move forward and change those stories. That's why we came up with today's sermon, because a lot of people probably tell themselves many of these old stories that either men are useless or men are whatever they are, controlling, women are unfaithful, they're not to be trusted, whatever it is. But they're just stories. They're not based in fact. My story has definitely had fact in the beginning, but there's no reason to drag it on for 20 years and affect all my relationships. So you have to let God redeem that. And I like to say it's almost like putting all of our bad stuff in a big old bag. And a lot of us do that at church. We put it in a bag, we march it up to the front, or we march it up to Jesus and say, here's our garbage. Then we take our garbage right back in the house with us. We put it in our closet, and then we wonder why our house starts to stink. Well, it starts to stink because we never let it go. We thought we let it go, but we never actually did. That's why it keeps replaying in your mind. That's why you keep doing the same things over and over. So I propose to you to let it go. It's hard, but it's possible. So what happens when, let's say, you're having this conversation? You've done your part in opening up, but now you've caused the other person to shut down. How do you help them retrace their path? Well, we have 4 power listening skills when safety becomes at risk. The first one is you just ask. Ask the person to express themselves. What's going on with you? Can we talk about it? Just offer the invitation. But be careful when you offer that invitation. When you're saying what's going on with you, you don't want to, hey, what the heck is going on with you, in an angry way. That doesn't work either. That's not really asking. That, maybe causes them to shut down even more. So just being sincere. Again, this is all with a pure heart. The next one is to mirror, which just means, just like it sounds, reflect back what you're seeing. Are you seeing their body language change? Or are you seeing them grit their teeth, tense up, whatever it is that you're seeing? Because they can say you're completely fine, but your actions are showing that you're definitely not fine. If that doesn't work, then you can move on and just paraphrase. Paraphrasing just means to put the message in your own words just so you can gain understanding. Sometimes what you're hearing isn't even what somebody's saying, because of maybe the story you tell or just a misunderstanding. But this could take some back and forth because I could say, are you saying this? And she'll say, no. Well, let me try again. Is this what you're saying? It's just to gain a common understanding. That takes time, patience, and skill. The last one is priming. Priming is just like it sounds. If anybody has an old weed eater, you put some gas in it, you push the little prime button about 10 times, and it shoots just enough fuel in there to allow you to start the machine. This is very much the same thing. It's just offering your best guess at what they are thinking and what they are going through, just sending out just a little bit of fuel in that. And what I'm seeing, are you feeling this way because you're disrespected or you think I said something wrong? And then that might cause somebody to open up. So before we end here, I'm going to share a story on how these actually work. There's 2 people in this story, myself and my wife, and one of us is great at communicating, the other's not. So here's how the story goes. It's a silly one, but whatever. So we're sitting at our kitchen table. It's myself, my wife, and my stepdaughter. I'm working on this sermon on my phone. My wife's working on some online schooling that she's doing, so she's concentrating very much, on what she's working on. My stepdaughter's doing a little bit of homework for a project she has. I kind of finish up with my sermon, that I get to a certain part. I press pause and I flip over to Pinterest. Great place, wholesome place. One of the funny jokes that comes down says, the world's longest fart. Me, being the completely mature spiritual man that I am, of course, I pressed play. What came out of my phone was, in fact, possibly one of the world's longest farts. They even put it to music, made a symphony, and injected the fart into the noise. This was a couple minutes that this was playing. My wife looks up at me in complete disgust. And she says, simple minds like simple things. Some of you agree with her. Sounds like, whatever. But I got really upset with that. I felt completely disrespected by her saying that. I felt she was calling me simple, unintelligent, childish, all these things that I was hearing her say. So I shut down. I stopped talking to her. I went to the kitchen, got a cup of water, slammed the drawer, came back, sat down. I still had work to do, but now I was angry with her. So she asks me, what's wrong with you? I say, none. I just don't feel like talking anymore. Nothing's wrong. I'm fine. I didn't want to let her know that it affected me that badly. So she says to me, she uses a second skill, and she says to me, I can tell you're not fine. You're not talking anymore. You look very angry at me. I can tell something's not wrong. Now, we didn't do the paraphrasing part because I didn't say anything for her to paraphrase. So these skills aren't linear. You don't got to jump from A, B, C, D, D. Just pick the skill and use it, utilize it when necessary. So she primed it, that conversation. She says, and she used the contrasting. She says, are you mad because I disrespected you? Maybe. Are you mad because I called you simple-minded? Well, yeah. She was getting me to open up and talk to her about it. And then she contrasted her conversation by saying, you know what, I don't think you're simple-minded at all. I don't think you're unintelligent. As a matter of fact, I think you're very intelligent, and you're more mature than sitting listening to this length of a fart noise. Again, I think you guys all agree with her. Whatever. I thought I'd have a few on board with me, but whatever. So these skills do work. They do work. They may be kind of weird at first, but it does help your communication. It's allowed us to kind of open up to each other and more quickly, whereas before it would take 2 days to solve an argument, and we realized that doesn't work, that now it might take an hour, which is a huge improvement. And I'm not perfect at this. As you can probably guess, when I said one of us is good at this and the other isn't, she's the one that's good at it, I'm not. But I am committed to learning. I'm committed to trying. And anybody out there that wants to commit to learn and try, the skills are there and they're available. Using a tool for what it's not intended was one day I was demoing a side of a building, and I heard a buzzing noise. Didn't know what the buzzing noise was, so I just kept hammering away. I hammered away until I uncovered a huge wasp's nest. The wasps all take off that way, except for one. One of them turns around, looks at me, I swear he looked at me, came right back at me, and stung me right here in the face. My natural response was to swat at that bee with the claw end of this hammer. Wham! Split my face open with my own hammer. That is not what this was intended, but that was my natural reaction. So even in communication, your natural reaction may not be the correct reaction. It may actually injure you more than it was ever intended to. So again, these are all new skills. People say that you can't teach old dogs new tricks. I propose we're not dogs, these aren't tricks. These are a set of skills, when utilized, will actually improve your relationships and your communications. So before we end, I'd like to, if anybody's here from our prayer team, to come forward. Do we have anybody in the second service from our prayer team? Here we go. We got a couple. So what they're here for is that if this is something that, if you have a story that has kind of kept your communication down for your whole life, part of your life, and you want somebody to talk that through and give that to God with the rest of your garbage, that's what they're here for. I think what a lot of churches also do wrong is they invite you to give your life to Jesus, but then don't tell you what's next. So you leave wondering, okay, I just did that, now what's supposed to happen? What they're going to give you is they give you some information on the next steps to kind of help guide you on your path. Pastor Matt on the corner there is, if it's your first time or maybe your first time back in a long time, he'd like to invite you to the little welcome thing that we have going on. It takes about 15 minutes, and he'll give you a short video, some refreshments, tell you about what the church is about, what we believe, get a chance to know our staff, and get our staff a chance to know you, and maybe hear a little bit about you. So if you're interested in that, that's what Pastor Matt's there for. So now I'd just like to pray for everybody so we can close. So if you bow your heads, I'd like to say, dear Lord, just thank you for the opportunity to leave our trash with you. Thank you for an opportunity to restore relationships once we realize that the stories we tell are nothing more than just that, just a story. That we are able and capable with your help to get past that and open up a pure line of communication that comes from our hearts, not from our minds, because our minds are where we're messed up. Our minds are where we keep all of these memories, And it's our hearts that we need to follow, not that mind. So please, Lord, come alongside us, strengthen our hearts so we can overcome those. I pray for everybody that this week is a healthy week, a safe week. And think about your mothers. If you are a mother, then just know that you're loved. And the next week is all about you. And please join us again, Lord. Just keep us safe. Stay with us. Continue to teach us how to become better missionaries and better mentors. It's in your name that I pray. Amen. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a good week.